This is the Cover 3 Tailgate. And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fernelli. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 Tailgate. Getting interactive here on a Thursday because we're going to open up that big old bag of mail. I was digging through it last night. We got some great questions where listeners have gone. They've given us a 5-star review, and in that review, they have put their mailbag question, including a nice little game that we like to play often here on the Cover 3 podcast, Bowl or No Bowl. That one coming from the 5-star mailbag, plus some questions that have been lingering, including Virginia Tech. That's one to keep an eye on, especially as we're starting to see those initial preseason ratings grow and grow and grow. We got some questions from the tailgate, the early birds who already got in. We will get to you as well, but we got to begin with something like oh yeah, there's Danny. Thank you for showing it.
Danny's not here today. Danny's currently in the dentist. You know, things are going a little long. You could see some swelling there on the right side. So we're just proud of Danny for going to the dentist.
That's true. Danny's fear of the dentist was something that we had to overcome as a show, you know, early on, with the dentist being such a key part of the Cover 3 universe. And I'm proud of him. I think that's what we say. So Danny was hoping he'd be able to make it. We'll see if he gets out of the chair. Can we get that photo one more time for everybody here? Well, I mean, if you're watching our youtube.com/cover3, we need to give you the goods, because that's that is an experience that I think a lot of people have been through before. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, you don't get.
Wouldn't it be a Thursday show without the dentist making an appearance?
Yeah. Are they gonna let him keep the glasses?
Well, you know, you don't get to pick the glasses. They pick the glasses for you along the way. All right. So we're going to begin with something that already I've seen on social media. A lot of people have reached out because, guys, I'm so sorry. It's never going to end. It's never going to end. The coaching carousel is spinning again. As news breaks here on this Thursday morning, I first saw it from 24/7 Sports' Matt Zenitz, always on top of the breaking news. And Matt reported that sitting head coach, Georgia State, Sean Elliott, is going to be leaving to become the tight ends coach at South Carolina. Sean Elliott at South Carolina, you remember it before. He was an assistant on Steve Spurrier's staff after Steve Spurrier left his post mid-season. Sean Elliott took over, so he was the one-time interim head coach of the Gamecocks. So, again, I'm so sorry. The coaching carousel is just never, ever going to end. But the thing that's interesting here is that it's a sitting head coach at a program in Georgia State that was the bowl team, that was top Georgia State. I'd say top half. They were wildly inconsistent throughout the season.
They had two different seasons last year.
A top half Sun Belt team for Sean Elliott. And he's leaving that to go be a position coach at South Carolina. Tom, big deal or small deal? Let's figure this out, because we can throw it on to Kane Womack leaving his position as the head coach at South Alabama to go be defensive coordinator at Alabama. We could throw it on top of Mo Lindquist leaving his position at head coach of Buffalo, leaving that post to go be an assistant on Kalen DeBoer's staff at Alabama. Sean Lewis last year left his job as a MAC head coach to go be an offensive coordinator at Colorado. Not crazy, but we haven't seen a lot of this. Big deal or small deal with Sean Elliott leaving Georgia State to go be an assistant at South Carolina?
A bigger deal than some want to make it, and a smaller deal than others want to make it.
Yay. Now let's unpack it.
We're seeing this, and we see this in a lot of things. When it happens, one side is like, well, no, it's not because of NIL. And then the other side is it's definitely all because of NIL. The truth is it's somewhere in the middle. Sean Elliott's got plenty of reasons to leave Georgia State. Things are, they lost most of the team. They've kind of stagnated. And there's a good chance, like if you looked at the SP Plus ratings and the returning production ratings from our friend Bill Connolly, it's not looking very promising for Georgia State in 2024. And then you look at his salary at Georgia State, the difference he's going to get being the head coach at Georgia State compared to what he's going to get as a position coach at South Carolina, probably not going to be that consequential, if it's consequential at all. The difference is the workload. We can, coaches, we've talked about this every show now for a few weeks. Coaches will bring up the NIL, they will bring up the transfer portal, and they will bitch and they will moan about it, just like they bitch and they moan about everything. But the fact is, when it happens once, it's an outlier. When it happens twice, the eyebrow raises a little bit. When it's happening 3, 4, 5, 6 times, it's an eyebrow raiser. Like you could say, it's not just the NIL and all that stuff. But how many previous off seasons have we seen so many sitting head coaches willingly take demotions? Like you can reset your clock just by getting fired. Sean Elliott didn't have to leave Georgia State to go be a tight end coach because he could be afraid he couldn't get a tight ends coach job. He could have just gotten fired and then become a tight ends coach somewhere or something else. So there is something to it. Yeah. Like these guys, the juice isn't worth the squeeze for a lot of these guys being the head coach anymore. Being a head coach used to be the goal. It used to be the ultimate to what you wanted to do if you were in this profession. And now a lot of guys are sitting in that chair and they're like, you know what? Not really enjoying it all that much. I'd rather just go coach football. So is NIL the only reason he's doing it? No. Is it part of the reason? Yeah.
How many guys who are winning are doing this? Far fewer, right?
He just got to a bowl last year.
They finished
Jeff Hafley got to a bowl last year.
They finished 5th in their own
Chip
division.
Kelly got to a bowl last year.
Yeah, but like the fan base has wanted Chip Kelly out. The fan base wanted Jeff Hafley out. Both guys, if they had slipped even a little bit, are probably fired. Sean Elliott, I think, is definitely fired after 2024, given that they just finished 5th in the division with the team that he liked in the preseason last year. And now, as you mentioned, they're 129th in returning production. I'm fine with using some of the NIL excuse on some of these. I think it's total BS here. Sean Elliott didn't build a good enough roster for them to have a good team coming back this year. And I think he knew he was going to be fired. But even though I don't think that's really what this is about, I think it's about 2 things. Number one, do you know he traveled separately from the team last year for road games?
No.
Because I found this article in the Columbia Star. His son and family still lives in Columbia from when he was coaching at South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
His son plays football for AC Flora. According to Columbia Star, he made every game last year. That is not something that I've ever heard of a head coach being able to do if he has a son who plays outside of the town in which you live, and especially not if your team has a road game. His daughter apparently goes there as well. It looks like the family still lives in Columbia. So I actually don't think this is a pay cut at all, because the cost of living in Atlanta compared to Columbia is a significant downgrade, and you'll probably make more money potentially as South Carolina's tight ends coach and maybe run game guy if that's the job he gets. So I think he was going to be fired. Significant downgrade in the roster quality from a team that just finished 5th in their own division in the Sun Belt. I don't really buy into this NIL idea, specifically in this case, because nobody in the Sun Belt has NIL. Like, we know some guys who coach in the Sun Belt. They don't have NIL. They're not competing in their own league against teams that have like legitimate NIL, really in any case. So probably not a pay cut. Gets to be with the family all the time, back to where they clearly wanted to be, given that they go to high school in Columbia, didn't move to Atlanta. I'm calling BS on this. Like I agree that it has probably never been more annoying to be a head coach, but I can't buy that for this one.
But to counter that, yeah, Georgia State doesn't have NIL. That's the damn problem. That's why part of the reason Chip Kelly's leaving UCLA. If you're Georgia State and you're
teams in the
any,
Big Ten do have NIL.
yeah,
UCLA
and they
does
can
not.
just come and take your players from you
But
at any
teams
damn
in-
time they want.
but
And
teams in
that's
the
why
Sun
you're
Belt
tired of
don't.
being the head coach, because
You're
they're
not competing
stealing your
against anybody
players.
who has NIL. Like nobody in the Sun Belt has NIL. You're not competing against those teams.
No, you're competing against.
You're
the
competing
fact that-
against Ohio State saying, hey, I like that running back. Let's go get him.
Sure, and so is everybody else.
Yeah,
in your
and that's
league.
why head coaches no longer want to deal with this shit, because they're tired of having their players poached from them. They'd
Not head
rather
coaches
just
who are
go
going to
be
be
the
fired.
tight end
Like,
coach.
Mo Linguist was going to get fired at Buffalo if he turned in another season like that, right?
Yeah,
Chip
but
Kelly
if
was
you-
going to get fired. Jeff Hafley was going to get fired if he turned in another season. where
And they
didn't
reset their
inspire
clocks,
people.
right?
They did
Are
reset
you
their
resetting your clock by going to South Carolina right now?
clock. Absolutely. And you know what? If Shane Beamer gets fired,
Solid ground to you?
yes, here's the thing. You could probably be the interim. You were not going to get promoted out of Georgia State to another head coaching job with how things are going.
That is the funniest take that I've heard this morning. The Cover 3 tailgate, as things got rocking and rolling, somebody said there's blood in the water. Sean Elliott smells his opportunity. We've got ourselves a regular Ed Orgeron on our hands, boys. This guy is he's like, you boys need an interim? I can step in right there. But look, so Jamar.
I just want to say this.
Okay.
One final thing. When it's happening time and time again, and every single coach that's doing it is mentioning this as part of the reason for their thought process, how many of them have to say it, bud, before you actually believe, oh, you know what, maybe they're not lying?
Give me Ryan Day deciding to go take a coordinator job. Like, give me guys who are actually winning at big time programs
But
who make
Ohio State
$10
doesn't have
million.
an NIL problem. They're not the school that's losing players. They're the school
No,
that
but
plucks them.
they still have a dealing with it problem.
The head
Yeah,
coach
but
at
you're
a Big
having-
Ten program literally left to become the offensive coordinator at a Big Ten program.
Yes, they have no NIL, and Chip hates recruiting and was going to get fired. Again, he was on the hot seat. He almost got fired this year.
So
They have no
NIL is
money
not
at
a problem,
all
but it's one of
for
the
the
reasons he
program.
left.
Like the
You're
AD
using it as one of the first examples of why he left, but it's not a problem. It's not having any impact on the decision. It's just one of the reasons. Got it.
Give me a guy who wasn't about to get fired, who's jumped and used NIL as a reason.
I think
Any head coach who was not seriously going to be on the hot seat this upcoming
How many
year
times has this happened in previous years?
a couple times?
Give me
actually.
the
We just didn't
example.
always make
Yeah,
a big
but
deal
has
out
it
of
happened 6 or 7 times every offseason?
I think
No.
we have fewer guys.
It's happened
getting
once or
fired.
twice every once in a while. But
I
for
think
some
guys-
reason,
still
everybody's
waiting.
deciding to do it now, but it's not a problem. It's got nothing to do with that. Don't believe anything they tell you.
I'm still waiting for some names of coaches who are in good spots who did this.
Why
I
would
think
anybody in a
y'all
good
using
spot leave,
NIL.
bud?
Look,
There have been
maybe-
coaches in bad spots every offseason for the last 20 years. They haven't
Maybe if they're
willingly
better
taken
coaches, like Sean
demotions.
Elliott's not a
They've
good
just sat
coach.
there and got fired and taken their buyouts. But
Okay.
they're sick of doing this crap. They
Now,
just
that's
want
actually a
out
good
now.
point. They could have taken the buyout. Chip Kelly's
Yes.
independently wealthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chip Kelly's rich as hell, so he can take a $4 million pay cut. Hafley's not taking much of a pay cut.
I think you
Yeah,
guys are
I'm not-
saying
I am not
because
on
of
the side that
NIL
this
in
is-
different ways. You're not saying the same thing. Because of NIL has like 9 different definitions. Because of you're asking for somebody who's sick of dealing with NIL.
Like,
Like
they know they're going to get fired, and then they blame the NIL as the reason they leave.
But I think that the conversation with Georgia State specifically is that Jamari Thrash was a phenomenal player that you developed, and then he's gone. And
Sure.
that if Sean Elliott makes a decision that says, I am tired of developing players and then not being able to capitalize on their best seasons of college football, I want out. Now, you can say that is because NIL, because there's an NIL opportunity at a power conference school, but like strip out the because of NIL. I think that there is a way to look at that and say, if I am at a program that is developing power conference level players only to see them leave for their most productive seasons and go play other places, with NIL being a part of it, and I don't want to fight that uphill battle anymore, that has to be acknowledged as a factor for any of these decisions of I am not going to be the head coach of this program that has just become a farm system for the schools at the top of the pecking order.
Sure. Totally agree with that. And it's a huge pain in the ass, but you do get paid pretty damn well to deal with it. Also, none of the programs against which you're competing are able to retain their players either. So that's where I don't buy it as an analogy to the UCLA situation, because there are teams in the Big Ten that can keep their players and retain them, whereas UCLA, maybe not with their NIL situation. Nobody in the Sun Belt is keeping a good player if a legitimate team comes calling. They're just not. So you're not competing against anybody who can retain big time players.
And I just want to be clear.
It's so frustrating.
Also,
I'm
you
not
could finish
saying-
4th and 5th with 2 of your best rosters you're ever going to have. Like, Georgia State's probably going to really, really suck this year, and he was going to get fired.
I'm not saying NIL and all this stuff is the only reason these coaches are doing it. I'm saying NIL and all this stuff is one of the leading factors for why these coaches are doing it. And the fact that we are currently in a state where nobody knows what the hell the future of this sport is as far as the kind of labor-student relation of what it's going to be.
Sure.
And these coaches have to deal with these headaches, and a lot of them just don't want to have to deal with the headache. And they all do have separate reasons for it. But this, to pretend that this isn't part of it, which I think, and I don't think you're doing this, Bud. I'm talking about a lot of just other people are pretending, oh, it's got nothing to do with it. They're just using it as an excuse. That's just as disingenuous as what the coaches are saying.
I think in many cases they are just using an excuse, and they just kind of tell friendly media who just parrot it without any kind of critical thinking. It's like, oh, he's leaving because of NIL. I like Matt Berry today tweeted out, and I think Matt's a sharp guy. So I talked to Sean Elliott at the Senior Bowl, and he was complaining about NIL. Guess what? He didn't jump last year. Georgia State didn't have any NIL last year. Why? Because he thought he had a good team last year because he had Darren Granger. And now that Georgia State loses every damn player, right? Because most of them graduated because he had a very old team last year. Now he knows they're probably going to suck. And now all of a sudden it's that big of a problem that he needs to leave for an assistant job in the SEC.
To me, the bigger problem is they've already started spring practice.
Oh, that's bad. I forgot that. That is a huge
That
problem.
I wonder if they're allowed to pause. Is there actually a rule that you have to do your spring practice within a certain number of days? Because you only get a certain number of practices.
I don't know.
You do spread it out to account for spring break, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So maybe you pause it.
Just say, hold on.
Like, go back to the COVID years. We're just going to pause.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
it's incredibly disruptive. I mean, it stinks because I don't even know how to start the what's next for Georgia State conversation because the skeleton staff tries its best to keep everything together, I guess. Yeah, it's gonna be a tough scene for Robbie Callen's Fighting Panthers moving forward.
So
I wonder how many teams are going to be able to walk into the TED and walk out victorious.
Plenty.
Used to be
Plenty.
you never walked into the TED. You used to never walk into the TED.
I mean, my guess here is that it'll be somebody who's somewhat connected to either App State or Atlanta because Charlie Cobb, the AD, was at App State
Right.
for a while, and then he's been at Georgia State for a long time.
Scott Satterfield to Georgia State.
That's another job too that people are like, oh, that's kind of a sleeping giant job. But the sneaky thing is, the cost of living in Atlanta is not real cheap, and if your head coach is only making $750, what do you think analysts make at Georgia State?
Yeah.
Like, how far away do you have to live if you want to have a family? Like, I don't know if Georgia State actually has analysts. I assume they have maybe one or two. A lot of G5 teams only have one or two, but it's hard to keep good assistants in these major metro areas. USC and UCLA struggle with this as well, by the way. That's why you have to have like friendly boosters and the university helping out with housing allowance and whatnot for some of your lesser paid staffers.
Look, it is a move that just, you write it down and you say Sean Elliott leaves to go become the tight ends coach at South Carolina and throw all context out the window. You're like, okay, that's interesting. But the reason why it gets this kind of discussion is that it is a storyline. It is, as Tom said, a bigger deal that people are making it out to be and a smaller deal that people are making it out to be. I think I saw in the cover, let me see if I can actually get this one because I meant to give credit earlier. NIL is both the reason and a scapegoat,
A reason, not the reason.
Right.
I think unlimited transfers is almost certainly a bigger reason, by the way.
Yeah,
if we actually want to talk about procedural stuff, the inability or the ability for kids to transfer at will now, just as coaches can, really at any time, as long as you pay a buyout, is, I think, more of a hassle. Because
in fact,
took transfers, yeah.
Say, Mike, this is your second show producing for us. I want you to go back in the audio and I want you to dub over every time I say NIL and the transfer portal.
Yeah. That's
the
the thing
transfer portal.
It's like Tim there, as you can see, youtube.com/cover3. Tim said NIL is a problem and a scapegoat. It's great It can work for everything. It's like one of those words in the language that can mean all kinds of stuff. Allora. All right. So coming up on the other side, we're going to start to take those questions from the Cover 3 tailgate and the big old bag of mail, beginning with, and I think this is still like a little bit of echoes of last weekend. If you had one drive, the game on the line, what quarterback would you be taking, and who is drawing up the plays? That and more next.
Out there are two colossal beings, both forces of nature in their own regard. But in here, as soon as the chute bursts open, the duality of man and beast begins to fade. This is PBR on CBS Sports Network.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. Thursdays are a day to hang out with all y'all in the Cover 3 tailgate, both live and also from, whenever you get a chance to catch us. But this one is from our friend Gregory, who jumped in at 8:01 a.m. Eastern time. Gregory was on it. We appreciate those kind of early bird activity. Gregory says, one final drive with the game on the line. Which quarterback are you taking, and who is drawing up the plays? Parentheses, this is the qualifier, all time, and it's just college football based.
God, I don't know. Who am I playing? What's the situation? Like certain teams, I might want a more mobile quarterback. Some teams, I might just want a passer.
All right, well, fine. I get it. Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
I was in Austin for that LSU-Texas game week 2, and Texas just kept, and it was at Texas, and they're just coming back with just like answer. And every single time Joe Burrow was like, cool, give me the ball. I think they had 700 yards of offense in that game. And it was just every single time he got the ball in a back and forth shootout game, he was like, I got you. The Alabama game, later on in that season, any single time they needed an answer, I got you. Come on, give me the ball. College football base. And look, I know that we don't have the clarification that I get Joe Burrow and Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and Terrace Marshall and Thaddeus Moss, but everything we've seen from Joe Burrow since then. And that dude is just unreal at being able to execute under pressure. That is actually the version of football that I have decided to show my almost 2-year-old. Has taken a big interest to football right now. Like the one that's about to turn 4, like he got it early, but he's not as like into it now. But Pooch is into it a lot. And when he wants to watch football, I just do LSU 2019 highlights on YouTube. And he's like, duh, good duh. So I'm going to go Joe Burrow as my quarterback. And I'll say, who's calling plays? Are there any like awesome elite late game schemers in college football?
I don't know that it's scheme at that point as much as it's talent.
Yeah, right. Just execution.
Maybe just somebody who fits. Like you probably don't want a spread option guy for Joe Burrow.
Right.
Like pick a guy that really good pass game stuff. Honestly, this is going to be sacrilegious, but Saban's talked about like the toughest guy he ever faced off in practice was Jimbo. Like if you wanted to run a really, really complex offense and you got Joe Burrow who can probably understand it, that's not a bad one to go with.
I'll take Cam Newton and Steve Spurrier.
Damn it. Okay. Yeah. Because to me, that's actually the right answer. Not the Spurrier part, but go ahead. Sorry.
Well, Cam Newton for sure. Play caller, I'm not really that concerned about. Just give me Cam Newton in the final minute on the final drive. Because, yeah, especially if he's not playing on that Auburn offense and he actually has receivers and running backs available to play with.
I mean, forget like the Auburn example. I was going back to look at Super Bowl 50 in advance of this one. He had Ted Ginn, geriatric Ted Ginn, Philly Brown. I mean,
geriatric Ted Ginn is still running like a 4.4.
I know.
I want to go Cam Newton, and I'm going to reunite him with a guy that almost I think would have probably like stopped the Saban run, or at least made it slow down. Dan Mullen. Like they almost did it at Florida before Cam, threw the stolen laptop out the window. So, like if that doesn't happen, I think Cam beats out Tim Tebow. And like, we never really have the whole Tim Tebow experience. Cam Newton's the best college ball player I've ever seen, regardless of position. It was just, it was like you playing against punt.
Yeah.
And Dan Mullen is a guy, just scheme and skills fit, like dude who really understands how to use a mobile quarterback. To me, that would have been pretty unstoppable.
Vince Young is getting a lot of love. I'm seeing from the Cover 3 tailgate. Let's see. You said Jimbo. Jameis cooked Auburn in the second half, and like in those final moments of that national championship game, was some pretty stellar play with that little combination right there.
They also cooked him with Kelvin Benjamin just being gigantic.
That's the good news if you're going to throw it high.
Yeah, throw it up there. He's like 7 feet tall. He'll get it.
They have you been to practice? Like, they did rep that. Like it was, hey, like if you miss, it needs to go through the goalposts.
Right. Yeah,
it's
because
high, it's high only. Yeah,
it's high only. That's the only miss that you're going to have there. Yeah. Deshaun Watson was excellent in clutch situations.
Yes.
I also think some of that was I don't know how much of that was scheme. If I remember correctly, it's a lot of Mike Williams coming down with 50-50 balls on like very well covered situations because he was just phenomenal. I see a Joe Burrow plus Mike Leach. I would take that all day. That would be a lot of fun.
I'd want somebody who actually ran the ball once.
Well,
in a final drive,
yeah, and Joe Burrow running the ball is a Joe Burrow decision.
You could pick up 15 to 20 yards on just a draw in those situations pretty often.
This is true.
Mike would never even consider it.
Spencer Petras and Brian Ferentz. Brandon, I hear you right there.
That is, Brandon, I'm sorry for whatever you have to go through. But I'm glad you survived.
Ryan in the chat says, funny, nobody mentioned Trevor Lawrence. That's a good point, actually. Like, that was really, really good.
Oh, no. But that's not a last minute.
Yeah, that's not like
he dog walked Alabama in his title game.
Trevor's just simply too good in the first 3 quarters to qualify for this question. Sorry.
Trevor was excellent when they beat Ohio State in the semi. Like, that is no doubt.
That's a good one.
What?
Sports Mahoney, give me Florida Gators, Urban Meyer, and Lamar Jackson.
Oh, yeah. That would be nasty.
Shoot. Oh, that's probably the best.
Yeah.
Florida Gators, Urban Meyer, plus Lamar Jackson. All right, I'll take that. All right, let's go ahead and let's dive into the big old bag of mail. Always appreciate when our mailbag listeners like to reach out and you go and you leave us a 5-star review. In that review, you put your mailbag question. We'll tackle it in a future mailbag episode. This one ties into our headline here that you see on YouTube.com. Eric chimes in and says, "Love the pod. Win totals for the Big Ten. Currently, there are 6 teams with 5.5 on FanDuel. Make every moment more." He didn't say that, I did. Northwestern, Rutgers, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan State, UCLA. I will say that again. Northwestern, Rutgers, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan State, UCLA. As of today, who is your most confident over to make a bowl game, and which one are you most confidently under, which brings about our favorite game, bowl or no bowl for 2024. So we've got 6 of the 18 Big Ten teams are on that 5.5 line over at FanDuel Sportsbook as of Sunday. So let's play the game, boys. UCLA year 1 under Deshaun Foster, bowl or no bowl?
We kind of talked about this the other day. I think Bud's on bowl. I'm on no bowl.
No bowl?
I'm on bowl.
Yeah. What about Michigan State year 1, Jonathan Smith?
I'm on bowl.
Yeah, I'm on bowl.
I think
okay. Let's elaborate.
You get FAU and Prairie View and non-con. So there's your 2 wins. You get at BC is your other non-con, which is not guaranteed, but it's winnable. In conference, you've got, again, you've got Ohio State, you've got at Oregon, you've got at Michigan. You're not winning any of those games, but at Maryland, Iowa at home, Indiana at home, at Illinois, Purdue, Rutgers, there's winnable games there. Like, you can get to 6 wins.
What's up, DK?
This guy.
Not good.
I hope you don't mind. We shared that photo.
You should have. I mean, it was not good. They couldn't get me numb where I couldn't feel the nerve, so I kept getting like these zingers with the drill. We went 4 blocks, which I guess normally is 1 or 2 blocks to numb you up. Yeah, it was a long morning. I apologize for being late. I did not expect what happened. And it's not done. That's the worst part about it. There's nothing solved. Sorry about that.
But you went, and we're proud of you for doing
Yeah,
it.
that was the key of the discussion. You have, in the last couple of years, really overcome your fear of the dentist to the point that you're going in to get the stuff taken care of. So good job, Danny.
It's not doing much to soothe my fears when stuff like today happens. Anyway, back to the show.
So, yeah, we are playing bowl or no bowl in 2024, as listener Eric chimed in from the big old bag of mail, pointing out that the following teams all have 5.5 as their win total: UCLA, Michigan State, Rutgers, Illinois, Indiana, and Northwestern. Right now, we've got bowl for Bud and UCLA, no bowl for Tom, both bowl for Michigan State. Year 1, Jonathan Smith for Michigan State. Danny, would you go bowl or no bowl?
I'll go over. What is it? 5.5 is the total?
Yeah,
I'll
all
say
these
go
teams are going to
bowling.
be 5.5. We're kind of sort of dividing up who lands on what side of the fence.
I think Jonathan Smith is going to be, I think it's going to be a change in culture, change in direction. I think they'll have a very clear identity. This is a program that's just been kind of beat down since the one-hit wonder that was Mel Tucker's first year. So I think it's manageable. Non-conference is pretty manageable. FAU, Louisiana, they can get it done.
Important year to get it done as well. I like the staff Jonathan Smith put together. I think that there's a lot of reasons, I think, for Sparty to be excited. Bud, I'll let you take a lead on this one. Your favorite team, the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. 5.5 bowl or no bowl.
I think Rutgers has a chance to go to a bowl. So look at their 2024 schedule. It's never easy, but it's kind of manageable. So they go Howard, Akron, at the Hokies, host Washington. That's a Washington team that is entirely rebuilt. At Nebraska, host Wisconsin, host UCLA, at USC, off week, host Minnesota, at Maryland, host Illinois, at Michigan State. I mean, there's some names on there I don't see. Where's Oregon? Not there. Where's Michigan? Where's Ohio State? Where's Penn State? They ain't on there.
Being over on UCLA and Rutgers, I think, is difficult.
I tend to agree. But
I think that game I think that's a game for both of them. It's in Piscataway, but if you're going both of them over, you're violating that rule of like too many overs potentially.
Let me ask you this. Should PJ Fleck have taken the UCLA job?
No.
Because they're not even on this list, and their FanDuel win total is 4.5.
Minnesota's is?
Yes. Like Minnesota is projected below all of these teams. That's why I think it actually is feasible to be over on UCLA and Rutgers, because the Vegas guys think Minnesota flat out sucks.
I'll take the over on Minnesota.
I will tell you, yeah.
I generally agree. I mean, it's hard to go 4-8, I think, given that you probably have a couple of non-con wins and need to pull their schedule up. But I am over on Rutgers. I think the WIMSAT experience is done, mercifully, I believe. So,
yeah, but you know who his replacement is?
I honestly, he's really bad, man. I
Tell
hope
the people, Tom, let's not make.
Well, we were just talking about PJ. The replacement looks like it's going to be PJ's old quarterback, Ethan Kaliak-Manis. So
I would take
Greek
Kaliak-Manis
rifle?
over WIMSAT.
Yes.
Oh boy.
Mhm. I would take Kaliak-Manis over Gavin too. I just wouldn't take him like to dinner or anything. I might, take
Agreed.
him to a cliff somewhere and push him off.
Easy with the violence for the Creek rifle. Come on. All right. So what about Illinois?
Not overly optimistic, honestly, about this season. I think that they got a tough schedule, and what worries me about them is that like last year they had to replace nearly their entire secondary, and that impacted them. But they still had pretty much everybody back on the offensive and defensive lines who mattered, and they brought in some transfers. This year they're replacing a hell of a lot of production on their defensive line. They're going to have a mostly new offensive line. They're losing, I think, their top 3 or 4 receivers. Then they've got a difficult schedule. Like you got Eastern Illinois to open. That's a win. But you get Kansas. It's at home, but it's still Kansas. Central Michigan should be a win. But then you open Big Ten play with 2 road games at Nebraska, at Penn State. You have a bye. You come home and you get Purdue, but you've struggled with Purdue the last few years. And after that, you get Michigan coming to Champaign, and then you get to head to Eugene to take on Oregon. Then you get Minnesota at home. And then you finish with the quote-unquote easiest stretch of your schedule, including 3 teams in this question: Michigan State, at Rutgers, at Northwestern. So I can see Illinois missing a bowl game this year again. But a lot of it will depend on Luke Altmaier and if anybody emerges at receiver.
Same? No bowl?
I mean, it's hard to go against Bielema, but if I'm already bowling on UCLA, Michigan State, and Rutgers, I have some coming here. They're gonna be no bowl, so I'll slightly no bowl. But yeah, the returning production in the schedule is difficult. Speaking of returning production, Bill Connolly next Wednesday. Cover 3.
We're very
Confirmed.
excited about that. He's got his returning production rankings out. Released the first round of SP Plus as well. Hey, is this? Never mind. Well, I'll save that for a conversation with him. Danny, are you same thing with Illinois? Probably.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah. I'm on under.
What about Danny? What about Kurt Signetti? Year 1 with the Indiana Hoosiers. They're giving him a 5.5, a whole win higher than PJ Fleck. Bowl or no bowl for Indiana?
Their one bright spot, Sorsby last year, is gone, right?
Correct.
1, 2, 3. I see 3. I see a 3-1 start. FIU. Who's WIU? Western Illinois.
Western Illinois.
Okay.
The fighting Leathernecks.
I see 3 wins. I don't think they win on the road at UCLA. Maryland, I don't see them winning. Northwestern is a toss-up.
Curtis Rourke disrespect right here. If Curtis
Rourke,
Rourke,
that's right.
Yeah,
Is he bringing the wagon with him?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Can he hitch up the wagon?
If Curtis Rourke cannot get bitten by a snake or catch diphtheria as he's guiding the wagon across the river, then yeah, possibly.
I will say, of possible Big Ten schedules, Indiana catches the most. Like, it's hard to say this when you're playing literally Michigan and Ohio State in back-to-back games, although there is a bye in between. But other than that, you don't have Oregon. You don't have Penn State. You've got UCLA, Maryland, Northwestern, Nebraska, a completely different Washington team, Michigan State, Purdue. Like, it is one of the more manageable conference schedules you're going to see out there. But yeah, I don't know. I'd probably be under here.
Yeah, I'm under. I think in particular, the stretch that you have to close the season is pretty difficult. I mean, they like that 5-game start. They almost have to be 4-1. If they're 3-2, I don't see 3 remaining games in the closing stretch of Nebraska, Washington, at Michigan State, Michigan at Ohio State, Purdue. Like 3 there means that seems really, really difficult to me. So I'm going to go under. I do think Signetti's a good coach, but yeah.
They've got like 5-1, 4-2 start, then 5-game losing streak kind of written into that schedule.
Yeah.
Get a future day trading Danny segment. The
That's
Indiana
right.
Hoosiers. Sell.
Yeah.
Indiana cracking the top 25 of the AP poll. Sell heavy.
But let's not forget, if they do go 5-7, that's an improvement for where they've been the last couple of years.
Oh, without a doubt.
I think 5-7 is a good start to the
Yeah.
Signetti era. 6-6 would be awesome.
That staff is made up. Its core is the JMU staff. Like I think that things are looking up for Indiana, but we've got a bunch of no bowls here. And finally, David Braun wowed everybody with what he was able to do. So now here comes the 2024 season. Northwestern schedule gets a little bit more difficult. Bowl or no bowl for the Wildcats in 2024.
I don't know. No bowl. I'm just going to bet on regression. They overperformed last year. I'm going to guess that there's some sort of course correction.
Who's their 12th game that I'm not seeing on here? A non-con?
They've got their non-con is Miami, Ohio, Duke, and Eastern Illinois.
1 and 2.
You think they're a lock against Duke?
No, I said 1 and 2. I was only
Oh,
from
you
Eastern
say who it
Illinois.
was.
Yeah.
I mean, it's this is a really difficult team to figure out because like I have no idea how they did what they did last year. And I don't know what's really improved or what's really gotten worse. So like I said, I just feel like they overperformed last year and it's going to bounce back on them.
I just like, am I that high on Maryland or Washington or Iowa or Purdue or Illinois? No,
But
shoot.
Maryland and Washington and Iowa going up against Northwestern in a year when they don't have
And they're all road games.
like magic powers that, you know, or just like whatever's happened for them to exceed their projected performance.
Yeah, like even with a different Washington, I have a difficult time thinking Northwestern's going to go into Husky Stadium and win that game.
I mean, we're talking about a pretty close gap here in terms of win total projection. There's only like a game and a half difference from those teams just mentioned and Northwestern. That I guess I'll go no bowl just because of the way I've picked it so far. But these are all somewhat tough. No bowl for me.
No bowl for Northwestern. Again, we love this. And I saw a conversation at the tailgate, you know, when are we going to do our actual win totals? Well, we enjoy to like do our official win total picks and our big time breakdowns when we have as much information as possible. We like to run it into the season. So we'll begin those around in July normally and have it roll out over the course of 6 or 7 weeks, leading right into our win totals locks. And of course, week 0 and the start of the season. All right, let's jump into, we already got the one final drive. All right, how about this one? Well, coming up on the other side, we got Danny in the house. Tom does mock drafts. Let's begin to get a little NFL draft talk. Talking about the quarterbacks at the top. We'll get into that and more next.
The madness doesn't just happen.
Y'all get ready!
And although it's marked on our calendars each year, it's built by moments of mayhem before.
And the crowd goes crazy!
And it begins to bubble long before it bursts. Sure, madness and March may go hand in hand, but it starts right here.
Going to the live Cover 3 tailgate. Ryan jumping in says, what do you think in the shift in wins for the NFL draft at quarterback? Jaden Daniels over Drake May is growing, as well as top 15 JJ McCarthy. For what it's worth, and Ryan says he disagrees with both. But Danny, I'm more interested in what you have to say. What do you think about the shift in wins as it comes to the stock of the quarterback picture in the NFL draft?
I think you see a lot of shakeup here because people are bored of having the same top 3 and they need to shake it up just to make things a little interesting before the final mock drafts are in place. I like Jaden Daniels, but there's no way I'm taking him over Drake May. I'm a big Drake May stan. So much to the point where I think the gap between him and Caleb Williams is pretty minimal. So like they have to consider that. I think Daniels, he's like, I keep hearing him as this electric runner compared to Lamar Jackson. I don't think he's as great a runner as Lamar Jackson was coming out, or the way Lamar Jackson has run it in the NFL. I think he's really good, but I think Lamar Jackson had another level that I don't know if Daniels does. And also his build is slight. Like if you're going to build an offense around that style of quarterback, you better be durable. And like that concerns me because I do think he needs his legs to succeed. And so I think there's some risk there with the injury factor.
Tom, or go ahead.
I would say JJ McCarthy top 15, no way. To me,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he will. He'll be he might be a top 10 pick.
he might.
We're gonna have 4 quarterbacks in the top 10, or you think McCarthy's just gonna pass Daniel? Wait,
I think McCarthy could be the 3rd quarterback taken in this draft. He's
How
3rd
much
on my board.
how much of this stuff do we trust this early on?
Not much.
I don't trust what you hear from teams. I just talk from what I talk to other evaluators and what I see myself. I think JJ McCarthy has got a very good chance to be the 3rd quarterback going off the board. Because my board right now is Caleb and May are in their own tier, and then I have McCarthy 3rd, and then another tier is like Jaden Daniels and Michael Penix.
What do you say? To elaborate on the McCarthy point, because I do think that
If you put JJ McCarthy in Washington or Oregon's offense, he'd have better numbers. He has a better arm. He's very athletic. If you look at him mobility wise, in the pocket wise, he gets through progressions quickly. He's not as good outside the numbers with his throws, but if you look up the middle of the field and down the seams, he unleashes some freaking lasers against, like we weren't watching a lot of Michigan early in the year because they were dog walking teams. But I've been watching a lot of the earlier games, and he's made some throws I didn't see during the regular season because I wasn't paying close attention that are just kind of like, wow. So, it's the knock on McCarthy is most fans didn't really watch him until the Penn State game in which they just didn't throw the ball and he was hurt. There was the Ohio State game where he made an incredible throw for a touchdown that Ohio State will tell you was an interception, and I don't know whether it was or not, but it was an incredible throw either way. And he played well and made key throws at the end of the game against Alabama in the title game. He just wasn't asked to throw 50 times a game because that's not the way Michigan plays. So people are just kind of box score scouting and saying, wow, but that's not how NFL teams evaluate these guys. They want to look at their traits and what their ability to do, how they progress and all that kind of stuff. And I look at Jaden Daniels, and I'm with you, Danny. I like Jaden Daniels a lot. But the problems I have with him are he did make big strides this year, but this is a guy who has now thrown 1,400 passes at the college level and is still very much a one reader run. And if you've got that much experience at this point and you're still really not getting to your second read, I don't know how excited NFL teams are going to be about that. And also, as you mentioned, he's sleight of frame. And I love the mentality from a heart standpoint. But as far as future, this dude does not understand there are sidelines and that you could slide. He seeks out contact, which again, I absolutely love it from an approach mentality. Like he's a dog, but he's going to get killed at the NFL level if he keeps doing
it. Why do we think McCarthy is not good outside the numbers or is not as good outside the numbers? Because if you look at it like formation wise, everybody had to load up against the run game so much. And he had two.
He's just not as accurate for whatever reason when he reaches outside the numbers. The accuracy dips. But up the seams, and I part of it to me could just be the offense they were running because a lot of what they did in the passing game was designed for the tight ends. Like Roman Wilson is a very good, I think he's going to be a third round pick and he could be a useful NFL player, but I don't think Michigan really had dudes at wide receiver. Like you see, like Michael Penix obviously has, and Bo Nix had it. Jaden Daniels. If McCarthy had a Malik Neighbors or a Roma Dunze or a Troy Franklin, he might have been a bit better outside the numbers because he would have had, frankly, more reps throwing outside the numbers.
Georgia State did postpone spring practice, like we were wondering earlier in the day. That just makes sense.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
We'll be having much more on the NFL draft, and because guess what? As we have detailed, year in and year out, Ryan Wilson knows what he's talking about. Ryan Wilson comes on here. We know that guy's grinding on Saturdays just like we are. A lot of the NFL draft conversation, they don't know. We got you covered right here. It's not going to be our everything with the first pick. Does a fantastic job, but we will be dipping into, some combine reactions. It's one of Tom's favorite, the Golden Dumbbell Awards that we like to give out, to the best performers at the end of the combine, NFL draft previews and the like. Okay. Back into the big old bag of mail. This one's been lingering around for a while. So we're finally going to get to Lindsey Buckingham here. So question where someone gave us a 5-star review and put the question in it. AW09 says, can we talk about how Virginia Tech will be next year's Louisville in the ACC? For some context here, we'll be talking about this with Bill Connolly next week when he joins the show, but Virginia Tech comes in a little bit higher than you might expect in some of those offseason metrics and projections. Virginia Tech also has a schedule that is set up very favorable. So when the ask is, can Virginia Tech be this year's Louisville? But I'm assuming that is, you're probably not the second best team in the ACC from a power rating standpoint, right? But because you have enough answered from a personnel wise and a schedule that's manageable, you could find yourself in the ACC championship conversation. Bud, what do you make of the Hokies here in 2024?
Yeah. So Virginia Tech did a really nice job. I think maybe sneakily so with their retention this offseason. They managed to get the NIL money right and kept, I think, basically everybody they wanted to keep, or almost everybody they wanted to keep, off what was an improving team down the stretch last year. And you could tell me like, hey, they smoked a dead man walking Cuse team, and that's fair. And they kind of the same thing to Boston College when BC was pretty beat up and just trying to scrounge together enough wins to make a bowl. But they still showed a good bit of improvement under Pry. And I think there is a chance here because just go through it. At Vandy, favored. Marshall, definitely favored. At Old Dom, definitely favored. I mean, you really haven't left sort of that North Carolina, Virginia area so far. Host Rutgers, you're favored. At Miami on a Friday night, you're a dog. Miami's probably undefeated in that, like going in that game, so I would expect their fans probably do show up. But again, Miami's doing okay when they played that UVA team that had Brennan Armstrong 2 or 3 years ago, and they definitely didn't show up for that. And that was a weeknight game, like the last one I can recall at home over a decent team. So still not an easy place to play. You're still a dog there, but not a huge dog. Like you're not 14 at Miami. At Stanford, you're favored. Then you get a bye week, which is nice to come back from the West Coast to have the bye week. Host BC, host Georgia Tech, at Cuse, host Clemson, off, at Duke, host UVA. Their road schedule is pretty favorable overall, and I like getting games like Georgia Tech, Boston College, Virginia, Rutgers at home because I think those are games you can definitely win. So, yeah, man, I could certainly see Vatek making the ACC title game. They might be like the 5th best team in the league and could still make it if they run right and they win the correct games.
Kyron Drones is a player too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He started
He's
to
gotten better.
flash towards the end of the year. You're bringing him back. He could be pretty special for the Hokies at quarterback. And you're talking to Brent Pry. I do think he's done a good job building a pretty solid culture there. There's buy-in. They got something solid to build around too. I got a buddy of mine whose son committed to play there, and he was telling me some of the details about what they've done and kind of, it's just they're doing it the right way. So I'm pretty pumped up for them. Think they could be one of those surprise teams.
You know who I think is going to be the surprise team?
In the ACC,
Yeah.
don't
Not,
say SMU.
I doubt like ACC title game surprise, but I think they'll surprise people based on their schedule. Kyle McCord and the Fighting Orange from Syracuse. You looked at their schedule?
Yeah, it's very favorable.
Like their non-con is Ohio, Holy Cross, at UNLV, and then they get UConn at home late in the year. But in conference, they get Georgia Tech at home, Stanford at home. They're on the road for NC State and Pitt, but they get Tech at home, BC's on the road, Cal's on the road, and Miami at home. There's no Clemson,
No
there's
Florida
no Florida State. This is a team that could surprise people. Like I don't know what their win total is right now, but I'm kind of leaning over.
And that Miami game could be really interesting. If Miami's season comes off a little bit and they're not reaching expectations, that could be a winnable game for Syracuse.
It's 6.5 right now.
Wow.
That seems a little too much for my place. I'm still hopeful, but over 6.5 seems a little much.
It's because you believe in the schedule. You don't really believe in the team.
No, I think that there's enough through the portal to be able, Tom, I feel like you were saying that thinking that we were going to get a first-year coach, Fran Brown, is probably going to catch a 4.5 or a 5. Like, yeah, I could see this team winning 7 games.
Mm-hmm.
Really getting to 7 and counting it up might be a little bit more difficult, but I like
Wait,
it.
the total's 6.5 or 7.5?
6.5.
Okay, I can see over. I'm believing in the over.
I could see it. I'm not betting it.
Do they
Asking Syracuse to win 7 games feels
Again, as Chip pointed out earlier, we haven't even had spring practice yet.
I think one of the things I don't like for them is Georgia Tech's offense should still be rolling, and they got to play Georgia Tech early.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll tell you right now, I think that Georgia Tech game is a huge pain in the ass for FSU to play them in Ireland because that offense down the stretch for the Yellow Jackets was really good. And that defense still sucks, I think. But we'll see if they can take another step. Offensively, I would expect Georgia Tech to come out humming and score points on people. So Q starts Ohio, Georgia Tech, Stanford, Holy Cross, at UNLV, at NC State.
Yeah, Tom just read the schedule.
I'm just saying, like the start of it is, I kind of like, but like Stanford's going to be ready for them too. That's are they much better than Stanford in year 2?
We got time to figure that out.
Yeah, this will be interesting.
But hey, listen, This is a Kyle McCord fan podcast.
That's right.
We believe. All right, one last one from the tailgate. Well, we can answer real quickly. Just, I don't think this is a. I'm curious to see what you got to say, Don. What's up, Don? A question on spring practice and game timing. I noticed that Liberty has moved their schedule back more than a month. Practices in February and spring game March 2nd. This is a interesting question. Can you discuss the pros and cons of your spring practice and game timing strategy?
I'll say one of the. You want me to give them to you? Pros are weather is better. Like the later you push it. The cons are injuries come into play. I think it's pretty simple, isn't it? Like the earlier you get spring football out of it.
I was going to say it changes year to year. If I was a head coach, I would never have one time that I say this is when we do it, and it has to do with off-season surgeries. At the end of every single season, I'm going to take a stock of the general health of my roster, and if we have a lot of guys or big numbers and need to get stuff cleaned up, then yeah, maybe I am going to be pushing something back. But if we've got a lot of good work and a lot of good momentum at the end of the season and our roster is healthy, I might be more encouraged to try to get after it and, jump right back into it, get the work done in spring practice. For me, there is no perfect time without knowing the health of your roster. And I would say the health of your roster should determine how you line up the timing, in addition to things like, do you have the facilities and the weather to be able to make it all work? But I think that it kind of should be a year-to-year shifting basis, depending on how you're doing.
The other thing I would point out there is that I do think that we have, it gives you a better feel for what you have on your roster if you need to start kind of preparing and back channeling transfers.
To go earlier.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They also did play a game 2 weeks later than they probably expected. Playing on New Year's Day.
The example of Liberty, for example,
Yeah,
instead of playing in the Cure Bowl, they were playing in the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, so all of a sudden, let's buy a little bit extra time.
Tom, you got any thoughts on spring practice game and time?
The earlier that Liberty practices, the bigger Caden Salter's helmet needs to be to cover up all the balaclavas he's wearing under there because he's freezing.
the face to helmet ratio. Caden Salter.
How does that even work?
Did you guys watch the Flintstones? What was the name of the little green alien?
Oh yeah,
that's who Caden Salter looked like in the Fiesta.
Totally did. Wasn't he like from another cartoon that crossed over? Wasn't it like a crossover cartoon?
I don't know.
Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah.
Barbera.
Yeah.
Chat. What was the name of the little alien guy in the foot? Gazoo. There you go. Thanks. Sit down. Don knows everything.
Yeah, we appreciate
the great Gazoo.
Jetsons.
And the other thing that I would do, there are some teams that use spring practice as not spring break. They use spring break as like a breakup of practice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know if I like that. I feel
you come back in bad shape from spring break.
And like,
but it is helpful because then you ensure your guys don't get too crazy and you get back into shape a little bit. So there is a strategy to why the coaches do it. Okay. I hated it.
So did you have those situations where spring practice would be broken up by spring break?
Yeah, we did a couple before and then majority of it after in the spring game.
And wasn't the first one back a wasted day?
Oh my gosh, guys puking all over the place. Yes. It was brutal. But at least you kind of got them back into the rhythm. You could get all that out of them before, summer hit.
Yeah, if you were only given 15, I think that's tough to just know that one of them is just going to be a vomit spilling off everywhere as everybody's trying to fight through what happened down at Panama City Beach over the course of the weekend.
Club La Villa.
Yeah, let's go.
Oh, is that place still around?
I don't know. It might be. That place was legendary. There was another one. What was the other one right next to it? There was a couple there in PC.
It's just the strip, right? I mean, it's just
There were two spots that were right there.
Incredible stuff. All right, we will be back next week. We mentioned we've got Bill Connolly coming up next week to join the show. Talk a little bit about returning production, the early outlooks on the college football season from the SP Plus and ratings perspective. Lots of fun stuff to go, and we appreciate you rocking along with us. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See ya.